Just wait, hold this.
Namaste everyone.
Namaste, sir. Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali. Can you hear me? All?
Yes, sir.
We'll start. हमें अपने मन को हमेशा संतुलित रखना है. इसी में हमारा आत्म विकास समाया हुआ है. स्वयमे सर्वं ओम ओम ओम. आत्मनि मे त्वं ओम ओम ओम. स्मारे स्मारे ओम ओम ओम. चित्तं शामे शामे ओम. स्मराणि सोऽहं ओम ओम ओम. शान्तं चिन्मयम् ओम माम् ओम. तटस्थं केवलम् ओम ओम ओम. स्मराणि शुद्धम् ओम माम् ओम. Just a moment. So today we'll be discussing another Siddhi. Again, a very, very important Siddhi. Very unusual kind of Siddhi. And this Siddhi is of invisibility. Becoming invisible. Not being seen by others. That is what this Siddhi is about. And when we look at this Siddhi, again, as I have been always saying, that Patanjali was a very great psychologist. And I don't know what was the basis, because nobody can say what was the basis for selecting these siddhis which he has mentioned. But when we look deeply into these siddhis, then they represent some of the deepest cravings we have, some of the deepest desires we have, some of the, maybe even to the extent of, being obsessed with certain ideas. So, right from our childhood, our experiences tell us that the siddhis which have been talked about, they have been wished for by us at some point of the life or other. So, they are deeply connected to our psyche. They are deeply a part of us. So, like this siddhi of invisibility. Now, all those who are there in this class, can anyone say that he has not wished for becoming invisible at one point or the other in life? Or he has not dearly wished, oh, if I had this power of becoming invisible, what a great thing it would be. And for various reasons, we will not go into the reasons, because if we psychologically, if we go into the reasons why we want to become invisible, that will be a big, big revelation of our personality. It will be a very good learning. It can tell us a lot about our own personality if we can venture into that area. But that is not the purpose here, because it is not a psychology class. It is just it is a Patanjali Yoga Sutra class. We are trying to understand what is the role of the Siddhis. So this Siddhi has been very closely dear to the minds of people, and that's why examples would, I can give you examples. The example would be of say various kinds of mythological stories which are there, or even the fairy tales in India. There you will find an person wearing a ring and becoming invisible. Then Arabian Nights, that person wears a cloak and then becomes invisible. And there are movies also, we have enjoyed those movies and we love those movies. And the success of those movies is ascribed to the interest we have in becoming invisible, or this idea of invisibility. So very early in last maybe more than 100 years back, this book was written by H.G. Wells, Invisible Man, and movies have been made on the picture in this novel. And then periodically these ideas, these movies are coming, and maybe the generation before our generation, before my generation, I mean to say, there was this movie called Mr. X. So it was a super hit in those days, but then it became very old. And then we had when we were young, Mr. India was very popular movie, again doing with the Invisibility part. And there are several TV serials also, various kinds of movies you will find this. So this idea, and still, the one of the best of the very interesting information is that some of the best scientists are still interested in working on the idea of invisibility. So there's a lot of research even now going on about how to become invisible. Now, this is the background in which we have to understand this Siddhi. Perhaps this is the reason why Patanjali knew this. So that's why perhaps he has taken this as a Siddhi and explained to it. So we'll go to the Sutra. And then, several other examples like, Mr. X in Bombay was the one, another movie. Then Harry Potter, the invisibility clock is there in Harry Potter also. It became very popular among the kids. Various such examples are there. We can just go on. And in my childhood, when I was young, 10, 12, 15 years old, I used to love Mandrake the Magician. It was like, it was beautiful. This Phantom and Mandrake the Magician. And what was the characteristic? Mandrake the Magician used to become invisible. That was, in the. I used to love read those comics in which this Mandrake the Magician was becoming invisible. So these are the various ideas revolving around the idea of invisibility. And now when we go to the Sutra reads, Kahe Rupa Sanyamat Grahya Shakti Stambhe Chakshu Prakasha Samprayoge Antardhanam. So if we look at the English translation of this, when perceptibility of the body is suppressed by practicing Samyama on the visual character, disappearance of the body is effected through it's getting beyond the sphere of perception of the eye or by the eye. So what it means is, if the Samyama is done on the visibility of the body, because that's what is suggested. When the Samyama is carried on the visibility of the body, then the body undergoes a kind of change where it becomes invisible to the eye of the perceiver, eye of the person who's watching. So that is what is suggested here. Now, you see, if we look at Hindi translation, then we will go to the meaning, deeper meaning of it. Hindi translation says, शरीर के रूप में संयम करने से उस रूप की ग्राह्य शक्ति का स्तंभन, मतलब रुक जाना, स्तंभन मतलब स्टॉपेज, ग्राह्य शक्ति का स्तंभन होने पर शरीर का रूप चक्षु प्रकाश के अविषयीभूत होने के होता है, अतः अंतर्धान और अदृश्यत्व सिद्ध होता है. So what this sutra is trying to say is that yogi can, through Samyama, effect some change in his body, and he can stop the visibility of his body. That is what is happening. That through Samyama, yogi can stop the visibility of the body. So when he effects that, Samyama on the body, the person who's watching the body will not be able to see that body. The body will become invisible. That is the meaning of this sutra. Simple meaning. Now we have to exactly how it happens. It is difficult to say. It is difficult to know, because nothing of that sort has been suggested. That what will happen exactly, what happens exactly. So we have to look at the possibilities of this idea of invisibility. Can really it is possible? Now you see, when we look at the idea of Siddhi, this Siddhis can become reality by two methods. Two methods are there by which an object can become invisible. What are these two methods? Either the person has to bring about a change within one's own body, to become invisible, or he has to bring about a change in the perception of the person who is watching. Either way, the invisibility can be achieved. So we do something to our body now. Is there any physical example, any scientific example, any parallel is there of the first kind where the body can be changed, body can be modified in such a way that the perception is, distorted, or perception is changed? So several examples are there in the animal kingdom or in the world. Various insects are there where we find that there are certain insects or animals, they can bring about this invisibility in their body. So even at the biological level, so we are looking at the possibility of it. So at biological level, it is possible to bring about a certain change. Now, whether a human being can bring about that change or not, that is a different thing. We can think about it. But in animal kingdom, we do come across some kind of examples where these things is happening. For example, chameleon. Chameleon can perfectly change his body in such a way that it merges with the background color or whatever is around. And there are several birds also, the owls are there, several birds are there. You cannot really, they are there, but you cannot see them. So they are merging themselves with the background in such a beautiful way that they are not visible to us. So that is one way of bringing about invisibility, where one is not able to perceive the body. So this is one possibility. The other possibility is affecting the other person's mind and perception in such a way that it can happen. Now, for that second also, several examples are there, where particularly, one is the use of the willpower. Through the use of willpower, person's perception can be affected. Like in case of various magicians who are performing magical tricks, they make things invisible. So there the perception is getting affected through the tricks, or maybe the power of the will, or various reasons are there. So that is the other possibility by which invisibility can be attained. Now the work is being done on both the sides. So, somehow a lot of research right now is going on. It will be interesting. I'm talking to you, but you can, just Google and just look at the Google and type invisibility and the techniques for invisibility. If you just type that in Google, you will find several videos also you'll find, or you find, this, you put magic shows of invisibility. And you will find several magicians who have performed this trick where the entire big object has become invisible. And people have vouched for it. People have reported that they have really seen that things are vanishing. Things are just disappearing. So how they might be achieving it? Now, in one very clear cases, which is very scientific and very logical, that is influencing the mind of the other person through hypnotic suggestion. And this kind of thing in Mumbai, I saw very less. But when I was young, I used to live in a small town till my till I was 15, 16. I used to live in a very small town, and in that town, near the bus station, near the railway station, there used to be these bajigars, these majma wala people. They will come and they will demonstrate various. So I have seen something which are really fantastic and which cannot be described as logically true. But then, like, one I saw where a magician was there, and there was a jar filled with water, and there was a duck made up of wood. Now he will command, and that duck will, take a dive in the water, and it will go down. Now these kind of things we have seen. So it maybe, people do believe that these there are tricks also, but there are also possibilities of these people influencing, like mesmerism. In India, they call it Vashikaran Vidya. So through Vashikaran Vidya also, the influence, other person's mind can be influenced, other person's perception can be changed, or some distorted or desired kind of perception when they created in the mind of the other person. So in that, tricks are also involved, but then along with that, some truth is there that the superior mind can really influence the inferior mind. So that is what is perhaps happening, and many magicians are still doing it. And now, though, they have this invisibility clock, which we have been reading in Aladdin and his magical lamp, or Arabian Nights. A person has a cloak and he just wears it and he becomes invisible. That has become a reality. If you look at the scientific research, they have made some material. It's a material which is totally different kind, and they are where the light is deflected in such a way that the object is not seen. So videos are also there. You can check it there. Uh, this idea of invisibility is very very deep rooted in human beings. So another example would be scientifically, if we try to understand whether it is possible for the person to really become invisible. Now again, if we go into the deep science, say for example, if we go in physics. Now what physics says, this entire universe in which we are living, not only Earth, everything, this entire universe is nothing but energy. And this energy they described in terms of electromagnetic spectrum. So this universe is nothing but energy, and that's energies appearing to us, or energy appears or it manifests itself in this universe in the form of electromagnetic spectrum. And when we look at this electromagnetic spectrum, it is very huge, it is very wide. So beginning with the radio waves, it goes up to the gamma waves, and in between the radio waves and gamma waves, all the energy moves in waves. All the energy moves in waves, and it is in pulsations. So you will find that this electromagnetic spectrum can really tell us that there is a possibility of so many things existing which are not there within the electromagnetic spectrum, or that part of the spectrum which is called light. Something which is not falling in the category of being known in the light, but still it can exist. That is what we learn from science. So you'll find that when we are looking at the 7 colors which are there in the visible light form, which our eyes can see only a tiny frequency of this electromagnetic spectrum. It is so huge. Suppose if it is so big, only a tiny part, this much part, maybe 1/10 or maybe less than 1/10 part of that spectrum is called light, in which we can see. Rest of the 90% is something which is not visible to the human eye. So on one hand, it is the infrared waves, and the other hand, there are ultraviolet waves. And then, waves are becoming very big and huge when we are talking about radio waves. And then ultimately X-ray and other things are there where the rays are becoming very, very dense and very, sharp frequency and very short frequency. So in that, only a tiny part of the spectrum is called light, and whatever vision, whatever visibility is there, within that visibility it is there. So there are objects which are there in the infrared, there are objects which are there in ultraviolet. Maybe a human eye cannot see those objects. The possibility is there that there might be certain objects, like for example, scientists would say a dog can see infrared objects. Human eye cannot see, but a dog can see. So maybe dog's eyes are tuned to that kind of frequency. So maybe it is all about changing of the frequency. It is very difficult to say what exactly it is. How a yogi is able to bring about this change in the body that his body becomes invisible. Maybe it has got to do with certain change of frequency, or maybe some real change is taking place in the body, but it is very difficult to say how it is happening. But this is a fantastic siddhi which they have talked about. So as I told you, there are several examples of this where the persons have become invisible. Stories are there. This way, it is a fantastic siddhi. But then, however wonderful it is very difficult to really understand. And then the question comes: what is the use of telling us about this siddhis? As I told you, if we really look at each of the sutra very carefully and try to understand what is the logic behind it, what is the secret behind it, then perhaps we will be able to understand some things which may not be related to it, but may be very, very important in our life. So from that perspective, when we talk about, talking about this Siddhi, so let us go into a very, this is not stated in the textbook. It is not stated by the commentators. Commentators don't tell us about all this, but then if we really think about it, now when do we, let us ask this simple question: when do we want to be invisible? Suppose if at all we want to be invisible, what is the time when we would like to be invisible? Or at in the past, when we were young, when we were young children, we were in school, we were very young. That time, what were the occasions when we really thought that I should become invisible? So if we think about it, then perhaps we can learn a lot about our personality. We can learn a lot about what really uh, is our weakness, what is our strength, or what is the psychological makeup we have, what kind of personality we have. This is very important because according to Dr. Jaydev, all the sutras are somewhere connected to the yoga philosophy. So even the techniques which are in the form of sutras, they are also connected to yoga philosophy. And yoga philosophy is also yoga technology. Yoga is, and the purpose of all yoga sutras is somewhere to bring about a change in the personality. So perhaps this could be a way by which, by reflecting on this idea of invisibility and when do we want it, maybe it is representing those moments when we want to become invisible, represent maybe the darker side, maybe that side of us which we don't want to face, maybe that side of our personality which is really darker side. In psychology, particularly, Carl Gustav Jung has said that every human being has got a brighter side and a darker side. And the total personality development takes place when a person is able to resolve the differences between the dark side and the light side, and one is able to deal with the dark side. So dealing with the dark side, maybe perhaps this idea of thinking when do we want such kind of thing, maybe it can indicate to certain areas which we are overlooking or which we are not paying attention to, or which we are not bothering, because life is going on and we are managing, but we are managing with certain problems. So maybe the clue lies in these kind of thinking, where we can find answers to some of the problems we are facing, or maybe some personality issues are there. So all the possibilities are there in this sutra. Apart from the scientific things which I told you, that this electromagnetic spectrum idea, the tiny band of light in which everything is visible, and we think that is the world. Unfortunately, this is the problem, that we think that whatever we see, that is the reality, or whatever our eyes are able to see, that is the only reality. What our senses are catching, that is the only reality. But reality is much bigger. Reality is much beyond that. So if we look at the in somewhere in 1990, this sutra was done, and Dr. Jaydev at that time had said something. I had recorded that, and I'll just share with you what he had said about this particular sutra. So, yeah, it was 25th August 1990. So almost 24 years back, this sutra we had in the class, and I had noted down what Dr. Jaydev had said, and I had written it down in my diary. So I still have that diary in which all those notes of Dr. Jaydev are there. So doctor says, what we see is very little. Most of it we supply. Most of it we supply. Very, very loaded statement it is. We have to think about it. So what we see is very little. Most of it we supply. This is ordinary perception. There is other kind of perception which is indeterminate perception. Generally, we are at the determinate perception level. So now you see this simple paragraph, simple sentence, what it means is that when we are looking at things, we are always accustomed to determinate kind of perception. So there we want to verify and we want to ascertain what is it. So we will say, oh, it is red color. But there might be certain things which might be hidden there, which might be belonging to the indeterminate perception level that we fail to see. Because our minds are so used to and so accustomed to determinate perception that we fail to see the general or indeterminate kind of perception. That is what he's trying to say, that our senses have become faulty into that extent. So now all this is preparing us that how to see things correctly. Again it is related to perception. In essence, our asmita, generates the tanmatras, the subtle building blocks of the grosser elements. By superior knowledge of physical world, a yogi can influence visibility. The sutra makes us feel little humble. We recognize how limited our perception is. When we say that we see, we may not be seeing the whole thing. This is very important in yoga. Recognizing that there is something larger. There is something larger is very important. Nothing is said that is devoid of philosophical part. All sutras are related to philosophy. They create humility, better understanding. Our world is not the last word, because there is so much beyond. This spectrum idea shows us how limited capacity we have. This humbles us, which is very important in yoga. All sutras are in tune with the basic philosophy and cosmology of yoga. Now here, very interesting thing about this is the accuracy of the description, accuracy of the words. Now look at the words of the sutra. What does it say? It says Kaya Rupa Sanyamat, Grahi Shakti Stambhe. How did Patanjali know that the body sends signals? That's why the visibility is occurring. Science itself has known this maybe 100, 150 years or 200 years back. Even scientists did not know this because there were various theories about perception 200 years back. Now it has become so certain, so we take it for granted. We think that, but then 2500 years ago, Patanjali says that every object has got a visibility, and the other person has got the capacity for that visibility. And when they two combine, then the perception is taking place. So any object, if I show you this, now this object has got a visibility. If the visibility is not there, the object cannot be seen. What does it mean? It means that this object called pain is sending certain signals to all of us. And our eyes are able to receive the signals sent by this object. And then we look at this object and we say it is a pen. If this visibility was not there in the object, if this stimuli was not there in the object, so objects are sending signals. There's a stimuli. Now this orange color is there. So orange color has got certain frequency. That's why it is orange. Why this orange is not appearing as green? It is not appearing as red because orange has got certain frequency of that electromagnetic spectrum. And red has got another frequency which is slightly varied from this. Yellow color may have slightly varied frequency, and all they are affecting our eyes, the organ called eye, and then the perception is taking place. So this kind of scientific knowledge was available at that time also. They were certain how the perception is taking place. This is the beauty of yoga psychology. Something which moderners, the scientists came to know much later, that it is the object which is sending stimuli. 5 kinds of stimuli are there, and each of the organs of perception is receiving those stimuli, and as a result, the signals are sent to the brain. Brain is interpreting them in a certain way to come to an understanding, and that's how the perception is taking place. So various things are really, they're in depth, which are there. But as I told you, if we look at the at the practical, because these siddhis we are discussing, they are fantastic ideas. But then one may ask, what is the use of discussing them? In what way it is going to help me to learn about it? One is very obviously, doctor told us that it humbles us. We think we are too much. We think that we are everything, but we are not everything. There are so many things in the world we are not capable of knowing. And when we think about them, they really make us feel our own real size instead of very inflated size. So that is obviously one of the benefit of when studying these kind of scriptures, studying these kind of ideas. And other is, as I told you, psychologically, when do we want it? Why we want it? Why a person would like to become invisible? I'm asking you, would you like to become invisible? Today we are living in a world where a person is projecting more and more. He wants to be seen by others. He will do something. He will wear clothes so that people may notice him. So he wants to be seen. He wants to become very attractive. Other people should notice him. So when we are living in a world where we want to be seen, we want to be noticed, we want to be recognized, acknowledged, in that why a person would like to be invisible? What will be the reason behind it? So if we try to think a little deeper on this area, that why a person would want to be visible, maybe we can learn a little more deeply about our personality, about our thoughts, about our feelings, about our emotions. So that is the practical side I can see in this. But apart from that, it is just a fantastic Siddhi. So that's it. If there
These
are questions,
magicians,
yeah,
these magicians that they do their tricks.
yeah.
So is it a siddhi or it is a hypnotism or what is it?
Mostly it is hypnotism and tricks, basically. There are
It is
several
not.
tricks. Yeah, in rare cases, it happens. And in hypnotism, though, in India, hypnotism has been practiced, and there it is more from the point of view of mind's power. They develop the concentration. They develop. So some people are there. They can really for temporarily for a short while they can influence your perception, and immediately they affect your mind. They can take charge of. तो इसको भारतीय वशीकरण बोलते हैं. It is different from the Western hypnotism, which is more of clinical kind and which is normally carried out with the consent of the individual. So there also the possibility of this kind of perception change is there. But in Indian context, when we look at this, there are several people, earlier they used to do that. They will, even for, cheating you or snatching things away from you for temporarily, they will affect your mind in such a way that you will not perceive anything. And you will not know what is happening. So it most of the time it is tricks. Most of the time it is some kind of gimmick. Because a genuine yogi, why he would like to do that? He will not try to influence that way. Because he is not interested. अगर वो उनको छोटी मोटी चीजों में इंटरेस्ट रहेगा तो he cannot rise in yoga at all.
You could perhaps share the example of Madhav Das ji
Yeah.
with the.
Yeah, in autobiography of Madhav Das ji, autobiography of a yogi, and founders has told us about it. Doctor used to tell us about it, that they all had gone to Matheran perhaps, and there somebody wanted to take a photograph of Madhav Das ji, and Madhav Das ji didn't wanted to be pictured. So still the man insisted, and when the photograph was taken, he consented, and they stood for the photograph. But when the photograph was taken, Madhav Das ji was not seen in the photograph, although he was there. When the photo was taken, he was there. But then later on, in photograph, he was not found. So these kind of instances are there where, this is in case of the founder of the Yoga Institute himself has recalled it and recounted it. Through him, doctors came to know, we all came to know about it. It will be interesting if you really Google search and you'll find some videos also how they have made the invisibility cloak. Just taking the cloth up and you become invisible. That's all. Only the cloth is seen.
So as you said, like, these days people want to be seen. Like, they are all the time, they are on the social media and everything. So, like, it is actually going against the yoga, right?
Yeah. It is going against the yoga.
Yeah.
A yogi would mostly any spiritual person, he would like to live a life of inconspicuousness. He will live a life where nobody sees him, nobody notices him, because when people notice, there's a lot of disturbance. So they will not be visible. Most of the yogis will not be visible to other people. They would like to live a very peaceful life, unseen, unknown. And we can see in Dr. Jaydev's case, most of the time when shootings were taking place, all big shots will come to the Yoga Institute. He will be never seen anywhere. He will be always in a background, in a very corner. So he will be sitting and working quietly. He will not be visible at all.
Sutra has actually taught us a lot.
Yeah.
A good eye opener. Every sutra is a eye opener.
Yeah. And we have to also ask ourselves, this we want to be seen by everybody. Oh, खाना खा रहे तो मैंने ये खाया, प्लेन में जा रहे तो मैं एयरपोर्ट पे हूँ, ये का ड्रेस पहना है तो वो ड्रेस का फोटो. We are putting everything on social media and informing everything, every little thing we are doing, and what we are achieving. It's a big emptiness. It's a big psychological vacuum. It's actually a kind of weakness. So maybe some deeper thinking is required